issue of the 21st century and the future. Some have said that it is indeed possible to envision now a world in which there are black people, but a black race no longer exists. Would you speak to that?
I think that people will. Well, I first place, I don't buy the idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think the people of Africa will exist as long as any other people exist. What people are inferring that we will be integrated into other people to such an extent that we will no longer be identifiable as a distinct people. Well, in a world that's supposed to be a melting pot, we are the least meltable of the world's people.
Right.
So we've been in the pot a long time without melting. We can stay in the pot a long time, much longer without melting. I see African people as taking on more distinction and not necessarily losing the distinction. I see some loss of distinction. I see that emergence of a neutral African person who's neither black nor white. But I see certain realities bringing that person back home.
Okay.
Because there's some food for the soul that he can only get at home, no matter how far he wanders from home. I see no future for African people short of some form of world nationalism based on our Africanity and based on a recognition of our culture and its distinctiveness, the distinctiveness in music, the distinctiveness in entertainment, but the distinctiveness in thought. People have a difficult time thinking of us as thinkers, and they quite forget that over half of the history of the world was over before any of us knew that there was anything in the world called a Europe. And that we indeed did a lot of good thinking, and that during this period and before any interference with Europe, we had built enduring societies. There was no word for jail in our language because no one had ever gone to one. No word for orphanage because no one had ever thrown away children. And no word for old people's home because no one had ever discarded mother, father, and grandmother. But we had created a society that was basically humane, and that every element that we now recognize in Christianity existed in that society, but not under that name. And every element now recognizes democracy exists in those societies without the use of that name.
But as we move towards the 21st century, you indeed would be the first to argue that we are in a struggle over our minds, over our identity, and over our own self-definition of who we are and where we're going.
We are in a fierce struggle, worse than 2 world wars multiplied. Because in the 15th and the 16th century, when the European colonized the world, he colonized information about the world. He colonized image. The most disastrous of this colonization for us and the most beneficial for him was to colonize the image of God. When he convinced us that the image of God looked like him, he convinced us that the image of good also resembles like him. We must free ourselves from the mental enslavement of these images and look at ourselves and see pictures that pleases us. And if we fail in that regard, we will fail as a people.
Well, how do these neutral Africans fit into that as you see it? I mean, where are these neutral biological Africans.
But
Who are they? How many are they?
There are Africans who so taken with European education, European values or lack of it, that they don't seem to be wholly on either side. There are Africans who have lived outside of that culture and cannot adjust to the re-entry into that culture. When I say neutral Africans, I'm talking about Africans all over the world. I'm talking about a case like Jamaica, where the class and color situation retards the very progress of the nation and keeps it from being the great island nation that it can be. It has a large intellectual class, it has a large technical class, but it has only a very small class committed to the nationness from an African vantage point. But they are, if they have any commitment at all, it is reproducing the decaying and unworthy farms of that colonial master. And these farms were never designed for us in the first place, and will not fit us and will not liberate us, but go toward the continuous enslavement of us. You go to Jamaica, you find people talking about their Dutch uncles and their Scottish grandfathers, everything except Africa. And you wonder, say, how did this island produce a Marcus Garvey who looked at Africa internationally and called for the redemption of Africa and the return of some of Africa's finest colonies?
Or can this island produce another Marcus Garvey?
I doubt it. Then I doubt whether any great idealist will come from them under the present mental condition. If you elect a con man from Boston who passes himself off, a Lebanese con man who passes himself off as one of you, who literally studied Jamaican folklore, Jamaican East, Jamaican music, and wormed his way into your society, raped your treasure, and became rich because you were hung up with some illusion that out of many comes one, but you're not too clear about who that one should be.
Right.
If you're going to make a nation of predominantly African people, and you say out of many comes one, you must be clear what that one should think about, how that one should look, and the direction that one should be pointed to. And Jamaica is not too clear about that. What we're talking about now is a dangerous and delicate thing, because in a lecture on the Caribbean mind away from home, I said that the Jamaicans have been physically bastardized and the Barbadians have been mentally bastardized. So what we're dealing with is the bastardized mind, which is just as dangerous as the bastardized. The bastardized human being can have all kinds of manifestations. Right. And we know from our own experience that there are many blacks who were almost white whose commitment was just the same as the blackest of the blacks. And we also know from experience that some of the blackest of the blacks have been traitors to our cause. So we cannot measure our people based on color gradations or hair gradations when we look at the performance of them as against the color. We can find loyalty and treachery on both sides. But when we deal with the bastardized mentality, which runs through both of them, then here is where the great danger is. You got 1 foot in Africa and 1 foot in Europe. You are not going to go successfully toward Europe or Africa. If you're going to be a successful European, you have to come, your foot have to be solidly in Europe's direction. you're going to be a successful African, your foot must be solidly in Africa's direction. And what you have to understand with your split loyalty between the two is the European has designed no society with a hiding place for anyone to be socially comfortable except another European. And that none of us will ever be socially comfortable, politically comfortable, and culturally comfortable outside of the orbit of African people.
And what I want to push you on is the question of what gives you the hope that African people of the world today understand that. When I look at a country or like Brazil, where you have 60 million blacks who will argue with you that their oppression is a function of color and color has nothing to do with race.
Well, you have the largest African nation outside of Africa, numerically, in Brazil. And politically, you can, as of now, write them off as an arm of African world liberation.
Correct.
But how do you convert them
Exactly.
or move the liberation bandwagon without them?
That's
Can you
the question.
afford to move it without them? And if you dissipate so much energy trying to convert them, I'm afraid the wagon will move without you.
Right.
And so the idea is, let us take forward the people willing to go forward right now.
Okay.
And we have to deal honestly with what happened in the Caribbean islands after the concept of federation failed. What happened in the United States after the concept of the civil rights movement failed. And what happened in Africa after the independence explosion, because there is not one nation in Africa with a government modeled on African values and African procedure of governance.
Right.
Not one. Ghana could have been that nation had Nkrumah listened to his teacher, Joseph B. Danquah, who wanted a traditional state and saw no contradiction between affecting a wedding between a traditional African state and a modern state. And his idea was that with a traditional African state, the CIA and the British intelligence and the FBI would not have been able to overthrow such a government because they would not know where the bolts and screws are.
Right.
And we have to go back. We might have to step back in order to step forward, because somewhere in the journey toward liberation, we reached a fork in the road and took the wrong turn. And I believe the wrong turn in the United States was a misinterpretation of what integration was or should be. In the West Indies Island, a misinterpretation of the nature of partnership with your former colonial master. And in Africa, a misinterpretation and a misconception of parliamentary procedure as envisioned by your colonial master, and the assumption that you can take some of the framework of your oppressor and use it in your new drive toward independence and liberation, when you needed to do almost a complete house cleaning, to throw out everything. You needed to have enough nerve to throw out his textbooks, throw out his Bible, even throw out his food taste. You need to throw out his potatoes, go back to your yams, you know. You need to.
Well, let's talk about this point about alliance, because you have all too often spoke about the failure of us to understand the nature of an alliance. And when you talk about the global world and the African identity and the global world of the 21st century, what is it we need to understand about alliances that allows us not to make those same mistakes about partnerships?
Only two equals can make a successful alliance. If I make an alliance with you and you break the rules of that alliance, I must be strong enough to exact some punishment on you, from you, for having done so.
Okay.
And if that is not the case, I have no alliance, I have an agreement. An agreement made is an agreement that can be broken. An alliance makes, a true alliance, makes both of us dependent on each other to the point where both would think twice before betraying the alliance. All right, now let's say, suppose we did have an alliance with a European nation. And they're getting so much gold from Africa. They're getting so much bauxite. They're getting so much manganese. They're getting some copper from Africa. This is the blood of that industry. And they break the alliance. You close the door and say, you get nothing from me until you give an account for breaking that alliance.
And first we have to claim control over those resources.
Once we gain control over those resources, and once we develop a successful agriculture, we can turn to the ally and say that without you, my people will still eat, they will still go to school, they will still wear shoes, and that let's see who can suffer the most now that the alliance is broken.
Okay, and I think I hear you say that consciousness and identity and the idea about who you are will precipitate those physical resources in terms of who claims it. I mean, you have to first have a mission about who you are in order to claim something for yourself.
Once you have that mission, who you are, you will not let foreigners manage your wealth.
Right.
Because that wealth is the birthright of your children.
Right.
And you must preserve that so that they can in turn preserve it for their children.
But we get confused over internationalizing. I mean, we're so confused over it belongs to all of us and we must share it with everyone.
Well, we must not share. Look, when I say all of us, I mean all of us within this nation. I don't mean the whole world. You know,
I understand what
we
you mean.
we are really internationalists, and we're humane people.
Mm-hmm.
But the world is not structured that way.
To accept that, to accommodate that.
Yeah, because or to recognize our humane effort in that regard. We have done this before. We have said, come in and share. Or now, look at the coming of the Boers to South Africa. Mm-hmm. The little people that they call Hottentot and Bushmen, the Cushion Sand people. Said, all right, there's plenty of cattle. You need some cattle? Take some. You need some land? You got more than we're using. Give you some land. We notice a lot of you have come without women. You've come from a long journey. Take some women. The African is a perfect host. He's a perfect humanitarian. There's something unique in his character that has never been shown in another people, no place in human history. And the African has to first recognize his uniqueness and recognize this great strength is also part of his political weakness.
Exactly.
Once you understand that and begin to develop the essential selfishness of survival, he can do that and still keep his humanity by not losing what is political naivete.
Let's turn to that through the South African point in time, the crossroad that we see in South Africa.
Now, the first place the political naivete in South Africa reverberates throughout the whole of the African world is the assumption that apartheid is the main issue. It's not even a minor issue. Because they can destroy apartheid tomorrow morning. It would not give the African 1 pound of gold. It would not give him 1 inch of the land that's been taken away from him. It would not permit him to go into a single hotel. So the real issue in South Africa is Western or European or white control of the mineral wealth of South Africa. That is the headquarters for the control of the mineral wealth of the non-Western world. That is the blood of the industry of the non-Western world. And the African is naive enough to think that if the capitalist world is against me, the communist world is for him. And he fails to understand that the European wants to control him and the wealth of the world, be he left or right. And the racism and the European desire to control does not stop at the door of communism, socialism, or Christianity. And this is why he's naive. Now, I hope Nelson Mandela is strategizing and begging for time when he said, I'm against black dominance and white dominance. I hope he's begging for time. Now, if he if he's telling the truth, and if he convinces a whole lot of people that this is the true case, we're in trouble. Because what is needed and what must be ultimately called for is a South Africa as African ruled, as France is French ruled, and as English is English ruled. So that no matter who stays in South Africa, they stay under African rule or they go out. And so if they stay under African rule and the Africans want them there, all right. Otherwise, they go out. There are no terms. Now, his praise of ANC and relationship to the Communist Party, I hope, is a form of charity, a form of strategy. Because the Communist Party in South Africa is the most racist Communist Party in the world that has worked against the South African black laborers for all these many years, that has betrayed them on youth, in terms to their benefit to do so, that destroyed the great trade union movement built by Clement Kadele, and that the destruction of Clement Kadele's union is the cause, and the weakness that set in then is the cause of the extensive past laws being passed in South Africa, because they grew fearful of the African, organized. The same as the massive slave revolts in the first half of the 19th century caused new codes, black codes, all kinds of codes against blacks to safeguard against uprising. Kadele's union of 500,000 Africans unionized, demanding decent wage in their own country, frightened the rulers to the point where they put additional restrictions on the African to keep him from ever again emerging as a power force in Africa. And for a South African communist, for any kind of communist, to forget this, and for Nelson Mandela to forget that he left the home of a communist family and was turned in or was called an hour later when he had been eluding the police for years. So now, I have no proof that they turned him in, but there's a possibility that they did. Because the communists are traditionally anti-nationalists. When it comes to Russia, they seem to make a few exceptions, but the communists are traditionally anti-nationalists. Because the communists are saying politically what the Christians have said: there are no other God before me. There's no other ideology that you need to consider, not even the ideology or the maintenance of your own culture.
What is it about our people that prevents them from claiming their Africanity and always choosing between one of the European
some foreigners' toys,
right.
I put it, some foreigners' toys,
right.
is the assumption that there is a universality, and that he's part of a universality and need not practice the essential parochialism that I call the essential selfishness of survival, which every people on the face of the earth who are intelligent practices. I mean, Marcus Garvey said it crudely, but maybe correctly, race first. And this is the point that it loses. The minute we become internationalists. And when we get to a position of permanence, we got to wear the conqueror's clothes. We have the conqueror's ideology. And we think the conqueror means what he says when he said democracy and Christianity. It's like with integration, we thought that to integrate and to go to schools, and to be able to go into hotels, we had to dismantle all the small, very clean, inadequate, but very functional hotels in the black community. We also had to stop eating in nice little restaurants where those sisters could put a dish before you that would make a king envy. Now, all these were useful things built because Jim Crow had made it a necessity for us to institutionalize something among ourselves or have nothing. If you can't eat in no restaurant downtown, you become a captive customer in restaurants in your own neighborhood. But at least some of them were decent and clean, and the waiter or waitress was hospitable, to you. I'm saying that having justice and having integration, having the right to go elsewhere and maintaining these restaurants was not a contradiction in terms, because Italians maintain Italian restaurants, Jews maintain Jewish restaurants, Chinese maintain Chinese restaurants. It's part of an industry of survival. The Chinese, his restaurant and his laundry, who are running them, not his big intellects who are running bigger.
More importantly, they maintain a sense of community and a definition of kinship around which they organize.
And also an apprenticeship where not of the untrained workers and newly arrivals can get their job skills together before they move to higher things. So we have no place where conscious of design for our young people to sharpen their skills before they move to higher things.
But how do we claim our young people who do not even know that they are not free?
Well,
we've got a generation of children.
But more than a generation. At least two.
At least two.
Two that we know about. Someone asked me this question, and I wasn't too cool or too cautious at the time. And I spoke hastily, but yet I spoke honestly. I said, burn the Bibles and break all the televisions. I meant what I said, but I think I should have qualified and said it in a better manner.
Qualify that for us.
I should have qualified it, because the Bible has given us an image of whiteness as good, with all those white angels, white Jesus, white Moses. And it literally told us that by projecting white with a cloak of holiness, they have told us that black is not good.
Well, I don't know if the Bible has done that, but those who have been in control over the Bible
for the
last few centuries,
those who have been controlling the Bible, those who have used Christianity politically, have done this.
Exactly. They have de-Africanized the biblical truth, the historical truth.
They've de-Africanized humanity.
Exactly.
But then we don't seem to understand this is what is done now. The picture of Christ, Michelangelo's picture, the picture of the Last Supper, Michelangelo's painting. Now, who knows whether Joseph was sitting on that side or Peter was sitting on that side? Who knows one way or the other? They said what Michelangelo told them to say.
That's it. Okay.
And Christ, and Michelangelo's cousin posed for the picture of Christ. Now, who knows whether Christ looked like Michelangelo's picture? Well, he came from that area of the world that is predominantly populated by non-European people.
Of course.
So I never get into any argument about whether he was black or Because first, but don't give a damn. And then I asked the question, was he Greek? No. Was he Roman? No. Then he was one of those other people. And all these other people was part of the world's first international melting pot. If he didn't belong to the two people who came from Europe, he belonged to one of the mixture of people in that area. None of them were white. And even today, those same people are not considered white. Exactly. So a white face don't necessarily get you into the white race. That's the relation. That's the dilemma of some Jews. That's the dilemma of some Arabs. It's the dilemma of some Latinos. But that's not our dilemma, because we have never defined any people based on race, because race is a European invention, 15th and the 16th century. And we are the victims of the invention and not a creator of the invention. So what we have to tell people, you turn to the people who define the concept. I'm a victim of the concept, so therefore I'm not defending the concept. And if you're a victim and hurt by the concept, then turn to its inventors and not to one of its victims. But we have not faced down people in the marginal area between black and white who make prostitutes of them out of themselves, trying to belong to the white club, who don't want to impress the members of the white club by downgrading us.
So let's come back to this issue of maybe perhaps distinguishing between religion and spirituality, because part of the African humanity is certainly the dimension of spirituality.
Now
and that cannot be separated.
And I have been dealing with this for a number of years, and a few people are beginning to hear what I was saying, that the Africans did not create any religions in the form that we know it. Foreigners created religions for political purposes and turned one against the other. And finally, a smart political foreigner came along and created a branch of religion and said, this is the true faith, which means that the other faiths must be false. Then another one that said previous to that, we are God's chosen people. And they never explained what they were chosen for. Now, if God chose one people over another, and if God, as the Boers define it, ordained them to rule over the lesser breeds, and as the Pope defined it in 1555, addressing himself to Spain and Portugal, and said, you are both authorized to reduce to servitude all infidel people, then you are saying that God has stepchildren. And you make him into a bigger. And if you make him into a bigger, he is not an all-loving God dispensing favors equal to all of his children. And you're saying that we are his favorite children, and you're outside of that field. Now,
so one thing we must do to reclaim our youth is to get them to envision themselves as God.
And realize that the African, before the formation of religion,
Political religion,
created a universal spirituality that recognized and respected all life. And if you wanted to pray, you could pray to the water because God was in the water.
right?
Pray to the tree because God was in the tree.
And you could pray anywhere at any time.
But most important, because God was in you.
That's right.
God was in you.
That's right.
Now, some people come along and say, God is in me,
But not in you.
not in you because you have no soul.
Right.
And yet blacks seem to make a cult out of joining religion like the Mormons. They said they have no soul.
Right.
So if I have no soul by your definition of soul, what am I doing
Am I sitting there?
with you?
That's right.
Because I feel that I have a soul, I know that I have a soul. I'm more humane than you. You're doing things I wouldn't dare do. And if you have a soul, and if you're the favorite of God, and I have a soul and I'm not the favorite of God, then God is partial.
Right.
And God is prejudiced.
Now, Dr.
Then
Clarke,
God
that
is
might
not
be
God.
an easier challenge to do than to throw out the television.
Yeah, then
Now,
God.
how you gonna throw out the television?
Well, I was speaking symbolically because what the powers that be has been saying to us in the last 500 years is that God favored them over other people. That if God is doing for them what they said is doing and not doing for me, then he's not God. Because a God is not a beggar. But they are fashioning God. They said, man, God fashioned man in his image. They are refashioning God in their political image and with their political intent. They're making God a partnership in their criminal activity on the world.
And their technology and control of images becomes the flip side of their political religious expression.
Yeah, if you control what you see, they control what you think. And, they control what you do about yourself. Vandercook has said a race is like a man that loves its own memories, reveals its own history. It can never fulfill itself completely. What they know that we do not seem to know is that you cannot successfully oppress a consciously historical people because they would not permit it. And to prepare you for oppression, they must first remove you from the respectful commentary of history and tell you that all history is dependent on them and that the world waited in darkness for them to bring the light.
To you.
Yeah.
So would you just comment before we close on the future of the African world as we're at this crossroad?
I think we reached a juncture in our historical journey at the fork of the road where we misread the signboards for the different roads going in different directions. And we might have to come back to the fork of the road and read those signboards again to find out which road leads us home. We might find a signboard that reads Pan-Africanism, African nationalism, African unity, and the love of African people for African people. And we might have to start with a mirror and love what's looking back at us.
And love what's looking back at us.
And say to that person looking back at us, you and I will start a revolution
By loving one another.
by loving one another. And we can change the world by first changing ourselves. We will start our revolution tomorrow, but the best revolution, if you're sincere, you start it today.
Thank you, Dr. Clarke.
Thank you.
Thank you very kindly.
He just
Laid it out.
he laid it out for what it was, the reasons it was caused this way. Yeah. Craft and big EBD. He's not accepted in the white world because he tells too much of the truth.
That's right, he tells the truth.
Alan Boyd Kuhn is not accepted because he tells the truth about the Bible and how they stole the concepts out of Africa.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing that's so peculiar, in the books that they have the 7 commandments, the other books say that there was like 300 commandments. And these were the books from the
Now,
Torah.
Moses extracted the 10,
Yeah.
admitted that Moses extracted 10 good ones.
Yeah.
But there were others, man.
I learned.
No.
What time is your engagement?
Oh, 7:30?
7:30.
7:30, isn't it, for him to
Get
speak?
back to this.
What time is it?
7?
I don't go.
7 o'clock?
No, not yet.
Or
Quarter to
Charles
6.
speak.
It's
It's,
quarter to
5:30.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just
fine, well, I
need
gotta
to
get back
rest.
now.
You all gotta go home?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to go, bring old fish up to
He's gonna be
the,
leaving tonight.
Is it? I can't come, I gotta go.
You gotta fly back to New York.
Yeah,
just talk.
This is the third time this has happened.
she be lecturing here. Third time she lectured about college and I wasn't there.
Oh.
She lectured another time in New York. I wasn't there.
And
Now
Lucy,
this time I'm here in Chicago.
And that's something.
All this was set up before I knew about it. Now I'm doing the record. I get the tape and get back to you.
Oh, yeah.
Get back to you.
Because he has your phone number and address and stuff here.
yeah.
And we'll make the audio offer for you. Clarke,
Yeah.
we'll make the audio.
Of this
And,
one
yeah,
here.
we'll do it two ways for you because some of your friends and other associates might want to see it.
Video.
So, yeah, have a video as well. And you can just pull the audio off of the video we have for it. You just plug in your tape recorder into your VCR, once the sound out, just put it in there, you can put it right into your tape recorder and you can run right into the
To a cassette if I want just the
Yeah,
audio.
you want the
Right.
audio.
Yeah.
Get a good sound level off of that.
This is not a bad room to do. It's
No.
kind of thing,
No, but next time, gentlemen, I'll tell you all something about doing this room and doing it right. You what you call wash the walls with the lights. Face these lights against these walls, and you'll have a reflective light factor on the subjects, and it will not have any of the glare that you're getting this way. It's called light wash, wall wash.
Right,
Just
just to see, that's what this light's supposed to be for.
yeah, just
Right,
face it to the wall, and then you'll wash the light and
Before
diffuse that.
people start their work, I'll get back to you.
Huh? Before what, dear?
When the four people
Oh,
start their work.
absolutely. And I may be able to help get some students to, some serious students who can commit some time. That's gonna be a lot of work,
Yeah.
a lot of work.
What time you gonna leave New York? Or when are you leaving?
I think it's 8 o'clock.
Nothing is on.
Oh, just like this? Yes, sir.
Look at that.
Well, thank you. I thought I was thinking my chest
What
out.
was it for? Who took it? What was it for?
Right.
Yeah,
You know what it was for?
huh?
My office ain't too far from the street. I don't know.
Do you know what this was for, Minister Brown?
Well, it's, I don't know what it's for, but it's studying the heritage.
No, it was a spoof on the mummy's hand. It was a spoof on the mummy's hand.
I just come to the college.
You know, don't you remember the movie with Abbott and Costello and those people in the mummy's hand? You remember, don't you, Dr. Clarke?
Yeah.
We're not black folk in that.
That's right. That's why I said it was a satirical spoof on it.
But it's a good,
You know what?
It's a good film.
So fast.
Yeah, I mean, they got a handsome brother there. They got a sister with her jerry curls.
Like you all done.
You know, it's all Hollywood glamour.
You know what I mean?
You got on his clock boots, you see? His ever-ready flashlight.
Yeah, I know you've learned it.
What,
I know you have learned it. It's a hard work.
You know, I mean, to me, I just don't like things about us satirically depicted, that's all.
and the church.
That's supposed to be the inner tubes of the pyramids, the inner tubes where they're searching, and he's dusting off to get the sand out of the glyphs to read them.
That's where.
It's hard to see.
This here is the snake of life, which is the eternity. Yeah, this is the balance scales. This is the Ra, the sun, Ra, the sun god. And this is
I went over to one of those local school council meetings last night, and they haven't spoken a word yet about children. They arguing over
King.
the Bennett, over who gave it to them, full authority to do this. I mean, it's built-in failure, just to destroy these kids.
That's all it is. And then, you know, they turn to school.
But it's easy to learn to read.
That's right.
Because there's only
Instead of turning over to professor.
That's right.
18 sounds,
They don't, that's
17
right.
sounds to it.
Well, you know what thing I had to
Speak.
speak, I hate it.
You know,
think of a Tapvideo.
You had to do that for him?
Yeah. I
We
didn't like
have
it,
a
but
few.
you gotta have
You
a.
got, that's right.
You know, if you study Egyptology,
And you might got 2 sons starting to,
it's another thing to do.
You're
young enough to do it.
This is one.
Oh, where, no,
He's
you,
starting, I think, no, in the, you're not in this.
I teach over there too.
Yeah, they
I
gonna
go
start
over
the
there,
college
start
going
there.
like, yeah, man. They going to college and they can do college.
Lost the faith, huh?
Yeah, get your grip.
That's right.
Then you go on his eye, I'm saying. That's the only truth these kids don't believe that. See, they think they can get in them streets and you hip, with these girls and they gonna make it. But I think that it's not like that. It's
So
not
you
like
all made a
that.
tape for me, huh?
No, I mean, we did, we're going to.
Oh, you got, okay.
That's why I was saying if they had a VCR,
Oh,
what I'm
yeah.
gonna do is run it off at, while we're here, that you can use one of his VCR and make a copy, and then I'm gonna have to leave it with, Reverend Brown.
Oh, you gonna be back here?
I live here,
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just going to New York to, speak at First World, is that what I'm going?
Oh,
Wherever
fantastic.
he's sending me.
No, we got a whole series with just all women.
Ah,
And I said, let the sisters have a range. Barbara Sizemore is in the series. Somewhere in April, Wiley.
Fresh Wesley?
She'll come back in April.
oh. Then where is she speaking, where are y'all speaking at?
First of all,
Oh, then that's unfortunate, but I thought it was on Saturday.
on Saturday.
I don't lost the date when you come out here.
Well, you
Yeah.
should.
Yeah.
You know that. Is that your Katusha? Your ring, your name? Ivor? See, let's see. Can you say it? Can you say it the way they sound?
Now, go ahead, take this off, take the plate off.
Eva. T and a snake and the bird.
Now, one thing,
Yeah,
this,
yeah, this here broke off.
I didn't break it.
No, it's broken, you touched it. That's your name's good. So you still, in other words, you're using it now, you just go around. You don't have it on for our technical. You don't leave this on when you're transporting, do you? Yeah. Yeah. It's a good unit. See, you got those bubbles to balance it too.
Oh, yeah.
That's what that's
I
for.
forgot I hadn't used it so long.
That balances it off.
You're in New York, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I've got a couple of students who usually do this for me.
It's a good try.
What is this particular complex?
You mean the office complex?
Oh, this is an office.
Yeah, it's just about, the second floor is a black architectural firm. And, the first floor is my company and 2 other businesses. You know, the Chamber of Commerce is here, the oldest black chamber of commerce in the country.
Oh, yeah.
How long? Yeah, it's about 100 years old.
100 years old. Yeah, I saw the name out there. They got 2 floors.
It's the oldest in the country, I understand.
And who did they start it with? Under an insurance line or?
With 1901, they.
No, I mean the businesses that they started with, more or less.
Oh, well, you know, there was always a black community. In fact, I just did some history on Black Chicago, and you had proportionally more black businesses 100 years ago than you do now. That's right. They had a black business directory in
There's a book called The Guarantee.
1913. They had far more proportionally than we have now. We have given up on being controllers of our communities.
Well, that's not exactly fair.
Oh, I know. It's not exactly sensible. Self-destruct.
It wasn't-
Yep.
It's against.
It began yesterday, and the lectures are at 7:30 each night. Yesterday, Dr. Brown spoke on the man, the mind, and the spirit. Tonight's lecture, we have Dr. Tashaka, all the way from California, and he's speaking on African origin of leadership. Saturday, we have the world-renowned historian and lecturer, Dr. John Henrik Clarke, and he's speaking on Malcolm X, a radical black ministry, and historical view. We're not going to have a lecture